Hello, everyone. Welcome to Human Potential at Work. I'm Deborah, your host, and I'm really excited about having the guest today. We have Patrick Rumzek from Cisco and Kelly Jones, and I'm going to let Pat introduce himself and then also let Kelly introduce themselves. But before I do that, some of you have already heard me talking about Cisco. I'm really fascinated with what Cisco is accomplishing, and they're not just accomplishing it in the United States. They're looking at this from a global perspective, and so I'm talking about this quite a bit in my keynote sessions and training and things like that. And so I was really stoked that Pat and Kelly agreed to come on and really tell us what they're doing. Another thing to let you know is that we're going to have some slides during the presentation. And if you're listening to this, what we're going to do is we're going to put those slides up available on the website by the podcast. So depending upon how you're listening, whether it's Facebook Live or one of the many other channels we're on, we'll make sure that you have access to these slides as well. But we believe that putting up the slides a little is going to really sort of help tell the story a little better. Why? Because this is a very different story that we're hearing. And so we're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about Cisco. I've been a technologist my whole life, and so Cisco, I just assume everybody knows about Cisco, but in case you don't, because I've actually had some people in my speeches say, "Are you talking about the food company?" And I said, "No, I'm talking about the technology company, Cisco." So, excuse me if I say some things you already know, but we want to make sure everybody understands we are talking about Cisco, C-I-S-C-O. So, Pat and Kelly, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Pat, you want to start giving an introduction, and then we'll turn it over to Kelly.
Sure. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for having us on. We're looking forward to talking further about what we're doing. So my name is Pat Rumzek, as Deborah said. My job at Cisco, actually, up until recently, is I was the Vice President of Cloud Strategy. So you might be wondering, why are you on this call if you're talking about, well, I'm not going to talk about cloud strategy. But Kelly and I, a couple of years ago, started this project as volunteers, as a passion project, a stretch assignment, if you will, outside our day jobs, because we really believed in it, and it's sort of taken on a life of its own. And subsequently, I retired from Cisco in March, but I'm still at Cisco now as a program lead for this project. So I moved out of my day job, I retired from my day job, but I didn't retire from working, and I didn't retire from this passion project, which I care a lot about. So Kelly, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, great, thank you. So my name is Kelly Jones, and I work in the talent acquisition organization at Cisco. And so I lead the hiring for Cisco, and so that includes a variety of areas around early in career as well as experienced talent base. And Pat, we weren't going to let you go. You were too instrumental to this project. You had to stay engaged. But yeah, so we've been working together on this for the last couple of years, really focused on ensuring we embed all this into our hiring areas. So we're very happy to be here, Deborah. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and I've had the pleasure to hear Pat talk several times about this, and I'm really stoked that you're here, Kelly, and of course I'm very excited about Pat, but I'm really excited that you're here because of the role that you play at Cisco. You have a global role, and this is what you do all over the world, and so I think it's very, very exciting to see, somebody in the position you're in really taking such a leadership role. So let's talk more about this. So, and Patrick, let me take it back to you for a second, and I know you have a personal reason why this was important to you, and I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about your personal reason about why this is important to you.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Yeah, so I've been blessed with a child with special needs. It's my son Andrew. It's a picture of Andrew. Andrew's 30 years old now, and he was born with Down syndrome. But being a special needs parent really changed the way I look at the world, and it changed the way I look at life in general. And he's my inspiration. I realized, based on my experience with my own son, that people with disabilities are capable of far more than most people think. And whatever they do with a great deal of passion, commitment, and they're driven to be successful. And so that inspired me really to sort of start this project at Cisco with Kelly and some other volunteers. That also, while Kelly is focused on talent acquisition, she's also passionate about this project. She started in this project in as a sort of volunteer, not as part of her day job, and it kind of evolved into her day job, right, Kelly?
That's right.
So we're fortunate, Deborah, to have a lot of people at Cisco that care about giving back and making a difference in the world. It's very much aligned to our vision as a company. And Cisco, we're blessed because Cisco allows us to do things like this and start a project like this literally that had nothing to do with our jobs. And so we're fortunate.
And so I think that's a really good point. Why? Why does Cisco care? I mean, Cisco is a huge global technology company that really is more business to business as opposed to business to consumer. So I certainly understand brands that are selling to the community, but this is different. Why is Cisco taking a leadership on this?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to our vision. You know, I mean, 30 years ago when Cisco was started, I mean, the vision of Cisco was to change the world, change the way the world lives, works, plays, and learns. That's our vision. It's been our vision for the 30 years. It has a culture of giving back, has a lot of people that care about the world and making the world a better place. We like to use technology to do that, but we also like to do that through philanthropic efforts and other things. We have one of the most active corporate social responsibility organizations in the world. We've done some amazing things all over the world. And so it fits very much with our culture. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Kelly, but that's my view of it anyway.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I would just say that, you know, in addition to being a core value, it is something that everyone you meet across Cisco seems to have this as part of who they are. And it's an interesting question, Deborah, because when I heard your question, I thought, well, why not? Because I've been at Cisco about 10 years, and it's so normal to me that the way that we tend to approach our work is a bit about giving back and making sure that everyone participates in the upside. So when I heard your question, I thought, well, that's a strange question. Of course we all feel that way. And then when I heard your follow-on, I realized I guess not. But I would agree, Pat. It's just a huge part of our culture, and we're fortunate to work with a lot of really passionate people that believe in giving back and believe in doing the right thing.
Kelly, before we leave you, we talked a little bit about Pat, about, you know, his personal passion and, you know, his mentor, Andrew. But tell us more about why this speaks so much to you, Kelly.
Yeah, I would say there's two main reasons. First of all, similar to Pat, I also have a child with special needs, with a physical disability. And so it does very much change your perspective of the world in terms of how people see you and see your children and preparing your children for the world that they're going to enter. And my daughter's a little younger, so she's entering an economy where most of the jobs have not yet been defined yet. So it challenges you a bit as a parent to think about that. But I would also say that, in general, I'm a strong believer in a culture of inclusiveness, and that spans a lot of things. Oftentimes when we think about inclusion, we think about more along the diversity spectrum in terms of gender, females, males, but actually it's quite a broader spectrum than that. And so that's something that I've always found myself drawn to in my career, how I can participate in areas that just create a more inclusive environment, because it's good business and because everybody wins when you do it.
You know, Kelly, your answer really touched my heart. I also, as a lot of the viewers know, have an adult child with Down syndrome. She's also 30. And it's interesting. I was in the banking industry in technology for many years. And I felt the same way that both you and Pat did. It's like, how can I take what I know as, you know, working at the time in corporate America and really maybe have an impact on this audience that, you know, this community that I'm part of. So we're very grateful to both you and Pat for your work and your leadership. And I think our children are lucky to have you as parents as well. So, all right, so let's go into it. Let's talk about, and I will let y'all decide how you want to answer it, but so let's talk a little bit about the problem. We talk about this all the time on human potential at work. That's certainly a play on words. We talk about employment of individuals with disabilities, but we really are talking about the human potential. So tell us more about the problem from the perspective of how Cisco decided to start this.
Yeah, I'll take this, Kelly, and feel free to add anything. So, you know, a couple years ago, as I said, you know, this is an area of interest and passion for me and Kelly and others, but I guess I didn't fully understand. I certainly understood having an adult special needs child, how terrible employment challenges were for people with disabilities. I really didn't understand how awful they really were. And, you know, as special needs parents, we all are worried about sort of how is our child going to, you know, develop their self-esteem and self-sufficiency and economic self-sufficiency. And a job makes a huge difference in a person's life, as we all know, right? I mean, your self-esteem and your ability to grow your life and your family is dependent on your ability to earn an income in a lot of cases. So I became aware of really how awful employment was for people with disabilities. And at the same time, we had a special children's group and some other things that we were working on at Cisco. And I thought to myself, you know, why couldn't we make a difference? And honestly, you know, what started, I did a little bit of research, and I'll share with you some of the research that I found. But the idea was, we're a technology company. At the time I worked in our collaboration group, we use this technology every day. We're using WebEx right now. I'm working from my home office, as you can probably tell. Kelly's in her home office. We work this way every single day. Well, when you see these employment statistics and how absolutely terrible they are, what you realize is, you know, there's got to be a way for us to do something about this. That was what inspired us from the very beginning, was this. Our culture enabled us to do it, but we were inspired by, there's got to be a way to fix this. So these are employment statistics in the U.S., and they haven't changed materially in 30 years. Now, this is a global problem. We know it's a global problem. We know of countries, many, many countries that have initiatives around people with disabilities. But, you know, I show this slide sometimes, Deborah, and people say to me, wow, that's really awful. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities is 35%. And I say, no, that's not the unemployment rate. That's the employment rate in the U.S. And, oh, by the way, that's the best in the world. You know, right. So if you're working age in the U.S., 2/3 of working age people in the U.S. have a job, except if you have any disability whatsoever, and then only 1/3 of the people have a job, and frankly, only 1 in 4, 1 in 5 have a full-time job. Even people that have gone back and got a 4-year college degree, only half of them work in the U.S., and that's the best in the world. Most other places, it's actually lower than that. And most are underemployed, they're paid less, they work part-time. And, you know, Senator Harkin, I was fortunate, Deborah, you were at the Harkin Summit, right? Senator Harkin is a huge advocate of disability employment, and he speaks of this all the time. And he says, we've spent millions of dollars over 30 years and have had no impact. So this was the problem that we sought, Kelly and I and a group of volunteers sought to change with a project that we named Project Life Changer.
So, Kelly, do you want to add any more?
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of adding on to what Pat said, we are well positioned with our collaboration technologies, and in my mind, it's why wouldn't you do it? You know, it's a little bit about that. It's a supply, and it's a being able to kind of empower everyone. If you have the ability to do it, why wouldn't you do it? And it's a big problem. You can see from the problem statement, and I think we're all aware of that. But you know, if you're positioned to where you can do something, then you do something. And I think that was my philosophy around it.
Which is exciting. So tell us more about the Life Changer program.
The Life Changer program is, we had this vision of work is something you do, not a place that you go. Right. The idea originally was using collaboration technology like we're using right now, right? Voice, video, live video, high definition video allows you, you know, to be barrier free. You take, you know, collaboration capabilities and you marry it with accommodations, accessible technology, and you can do anything from anywhere. I do meetings all the time. I had a meeting last night with India. I had a meeting the night before with China. This is the way we work at Cisco. Why couldn't a person with a disability work this way, using collaboration technology and the right assistive technology to work in a way that works for them? That's how it started. And the idea was very simple. Let's just see if we can make a difference here. Using collaboration technology, let's try to target and focus on this disability population, people with disabilities, and see if we can make a difference at Cisco and beyond. That's really how it started.
Yeah, which is very exciting. I know that when I created my technology company, Tech Access, if we didn't have collaboration tools, and that was a long time ago, that was in 2000, I wouldn't have been able to hire the talented people that were working for me. And they were working for me from all kinds of locations, including nursing homes and, you know, rehab centers, because I didn't really care. You know, I think the way it should be, and Cisco's obviously figured this out, is you know, I just really need you to do your work and to get your work and your projects done. The days of clock in, if I see you over there working, those days I think are gone, you know. So the collaboration tools like WebEx has really changed the world and the opportunities for people with disabilities.
Yeah, and you know, Kelly, you might want to speak. We've come a long way since then. So that was our original premise, was really focusing primarily using technology as an enabler. But we've learned a lot along the way. And you know, this has become programmatized now at Cisco. And honestly, we see it as bigger than that. And Kelly, you may want to speak to sort of how we're driving this across the company now.
Sure. Pat mentioned the collaboration technologies kind of being the starting point for us. But one of the things we realized very early is it was going to become critical that we really embed some of these processes into the way that we work from a talent acquisition standpoint, from a how we onboard employees standpoint. And we made that decision because what we realized was anything that stands alone and feels like a separate process is just harder to get done. And we had the discussion, and we were lucky in that we had a lot of really strong executive support around this program. So we were able to kind of look at ourselves and look at each other and say, this is going to become a part of the fabric in which how we work. And so we really focused on embedding these processes into some of the current existing flow that we had, which I think is critical. So from a tool standpoint, from a process standpoint, from a how do we measure success standpoint, all of those things are really embedded now in terms of how we are hiring people with disabilities. And the other thing I would say is the supply piece of it, and Pat, I don't know if you're okay going into this now, but I feel like we noticed early on, one of the early lessons we saw was, we saw a lot of candidates that had the right character traits, the right aptitudes, the right interests, the right ability to do the roles we had, but maybe didn't have the right level of experience or training. A lot of our roles at Cisco are technical, and so we decided that we would go at this problem from a couple different angles and add to that our ability to kind of build our own talent supply. And that's really through our Life Changer Talent Incubation Program, which partners very closely with Network Academy. And for listeners who might be familiar with Cisco, we have a very successful training program at Cisco through CSR called Network Academy that trains people to work in networking technology skills. So we partner very closely with them to leverage both their curriculum and their process in an accessible way to also work on the supply side of the challenge that we had and create readiness for employment with people with disabilities. So it's really evolved from where we started. We started with this one problem statement about how can we use our technology to really innovate in this space. And being a technology company, we tend to lead with technology in terms of what solutions are, but it's really expanded quite beyond that to include how we systematize all these pieces and also how we work on helping to create a supply, both for Cisco and for others in the world.
You know, I think you brought up so many good points that it's hard to, you know, address them all. But you know, what's really so innovative about this, and innovative is the right word, but at the same time, it's a shame that it's the right word. But the reason why it's the right word is because often what we do when we're trying to include people with disabilities is we do try to create something separate. And then what happens is it's not part of the core company. And as soon as there's some kind of, you know, well, we need to reduce the extra spending, those programs go away. And you see this really, you know, some innovation happening, and then it goes away. So I think that's a very powerful part of it. I think another part that's powerful is that you're actually helping make sure that these individuals with disabilities have a very, very powerful skill that works for Cisco, but is also going to be very helpful for a lot of other companies too.
That's right.
Yeah, in fact, you know, just to add to what Kelly said, she talked about this Life Changer Talent Incubation Program. This was a necessity is the mother of invention scenario. So we were hiring a lot of people. I mean, we started out by hiring people, and we started in San Jose in a pilot in our headquarters in the Bay Area, California, and then we evolved and did some prototypes in 4 major markets: California, Brazil, in Europe, specifically in Brussels, and in Bangalore, India. And we hired quite a number of people. Well, what we found is exactly what Kelly said. We could not find enough people that had the skills we were looking for. So while we knew there was 1 billion people in the world with a disability and 80% of them weren't working, we saw lots and lots of candidates in California and in all these other locations that were very capable and had tremendous character traits, but just didn't have the right schooling or experience. And so they would never sort of make the cut in the normal recruiting process because there would be somebody else that has the perfect background. So what we decided to do was to use our own Networking Academy curriculum to build the talent pool, give the experience to the people that had the character traits and capabilities to enable them to work at Cisco. That's been really, really successful for us. So it's now a cornerstone of our strategy, but we didn't start there. We learned as we went along because we were driven to make this really successful. The other thing I would add about the Networking Academy, just a little bit of more information, Kelly mentioned a little bit about it. There are 9,000 network academies in the world. There's 1 million students right now enrolled in a network academy somewhere in the world. There's 160,000 people in the U.S. enrolled in a network academy today. Those network academies are sort of traditional delivery models, typically through a community college and university. What we're doing with our Life Changer Talent Incubation Program, and we're now seeing other academies do the same thing, is take that curriculum, deliver it online, make it accessible, and target people with disabilities for a career, whether it's at Cisco or another company. So we think there's broad appeal. There's pilots we're seeing all over the world using our Network Academy curriculum to enable people. We call it innovating employability. So we think we innovated employment with Life Changer. What we're now trying to do is innovate employability, create employability amongst this huge pool of talent, very capable and talented people, give them the right levels of experience, give them an opportunity, and they'll prove themselves. That's what we've seen.
And that's a very powerful statement. When I wrote my book on employment, Tapping into Hidden Human Capital, it was edited multiple times because who it was aligned with. And the editors kept saying every time I would get a different editor, you don't need to say hiring qualified people with disabilities. That's redundant, Deborah, take it out. And I said, well, no, actually we need to say this because often what we're hearing is that people with disabilities are applying for jobs that they're not qualified for. And we can get brands very excited, corporate brands, about including people with disabilities, but the supply chain, getting really access to qualified candidates with disabilities has been a real problem, not just in the U.S., but all over the world. And that's what I think is really, really exciting about what you're doing at Cisco. I also think that some of, and I was telling your story when I was speaking in St. Louis the other day, but there was a story, Pat, you talk about some of the surprises. And when I say surprises, delights that Cisco has found because of these really talented employees that you are making sure are trained and qualified to do your jobs. That for example, Pat, one of the things I'm thinking of is the empathy that you were seeing from the people in India.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's a couple of things I think we're doing that are unique from what I've heard, from what people tell us, customers, partners, folks like you that are industry experts. What we're doing on the supply side with innovating employability, I think, is unique. But the other thing that's unique is we measure and we have a very clear view of the productivity and impact of these individuals. You know, being a technology company, we measure everything, right? So we have a very clear view of sort of what our folks are doing. Well, a number of the people that we hired into roles at Cisco using under the Life Changer program, a large group of one of our pilot centers was in Bangalore, India. We have a large technical center there. And the people in the technical center are the people that answer the phone. When you have a Cisco problem and you're in Asia or you're in Europe, you get routed to Bangalore, India. And one of these folks answers the phone. Well, we hired a number of people with disabilities into that center in Bangalore. They were visually impaired. Most of them were blind. Blind. And so you think about how difficult is it to be a technical, assistance analyst at Cisco when you're blind and you can't look at a computer and that sort of thing. So we provided accessible technology for them. We created a flexible work environment, just like we talked about under the Life Changer model. And what we found, because we do measure everything, is their productivity was more than double the productivity of their coworkers. So it's not a case, and I say this all the time, and you've heard me say this, Deborah, this is not just a CSR project. A lot of times these programs get sort of pushed under corporate social responsibility. Oh, it's the right thing to do. We want to give back. We want to be viewed as a, a caring company and all those sort of things. And that's all true. But what's really important for people to understand, it's good for our business. It's not just good for the people and good for society, it's actually good for our business. The productivity of the people we hired was more than double the productivity of their coworkers who had no disabilities. They had lower error rates. We measure all these things in our technical service center, right? We know how many cases they open, how many they close, how long they're open, what the customer satisfaction is. And what we found is their productivity was actually much higher than their coworkers who didn't have disabilities. They worked harder, they had lower error rates, they had lower turnover, they had lower absenteeism. They were very committed and dedicated to their job. But the point you raised is the point on the right-hand side. This is a direct quote from the director of our Global Technical Center who said, it's not just one of these things that's the right thing to do. He said, these people don't realize the benefits to Cisco are far greater than most people realize. These are some of our best employees. They have a tremendous amount of customer empathy. And it makes sense when you think about it. People with disabilities have great character traits because they've been overcoming challenges their entire life. So they're fearless, they're dedicated, they're committed, and they're empathetic. And what we've had customers call us and tell us how empathetic one of these customer service people are. They didn't even know the person was blind. They're telling us that they have tremendous customer empathy. So we think it's an asset for us. It's not just the right thing to do. It's good for our business, and it's an asset for us in a customer service type of role. And we think the business potential for us is tremendous, both in terms of material financial benefits as well as the brand equity, which we really haven't explored, as you know, Deborah, very much. I mean, we haven't spent a lot of time on that, but we think the potential positioning Cisco as one of the great companies of the world and for the world has tremendous benefit to us.
Yeah, and one thing that I heard, you spoke at the International Labor Organization, the Global Business Disability Network, and somebody said to me afterwards, I think it's amazing the successes they're having, but I think we need to be careful about implying that people with disabilities are 2 times as productive as others. And what I thought was so interesting about that was you're not implying it. You have actually tracked the analytics and the metrics. You're not making this up. You have the data because you track all of your employees. That's what you do at Cisco.
Right, exactly. We have a very clear picture. In fact, to that point, let me just share this with you real quick. This is the team of people that we hired. And these are the specific metrics some of the things that we measured. 21 of the 34 people in this group are visually impaired. 1 was hearing impaired. Some folks with autism. Service closure rate increased from 60% to 80%. Number of cases managed increased. I mean, you can see these are very specific metrics. This is not, just a sort of theoretical argument. And honestly, Deborah, the other thing that's important about this, and I know there are some employers out there. I mean, I'm sure there's folks with disabilities that are interested in roles, and obviously we're very interested in creating opportunities for them because they can be great employees. But even for the employer side, the business case is important. While you might do it, or I might do it, or Kelly might do it because we believe in this, we've experienced what it's like with our own families and people with disabilities and what they're capable of. A lot of people don't know. And if you have a business case and you can go to a business executive and say, this is not only good for the world and good for the people, it's really good for our business. And look at, oh, by the way, your productivity should go up, not down. And whether it's double or not double, the point is that the productivity is at least as good as what you're going to get with another employee. You're not doing this out of social justice as a motive, driven by social justice. Do it because it's good for our business. If the personal passion doesn't drive you to do this, do it because it's good for our business, because it is. Kelly, I don't know if you have anything to add. We've had a lot of these conversations internally. You can tell I have a little passion about it.
No, I would agree. And what was interesting in what Pat just shared, that's what we measure for all of our employees. We didn't carve out any special measurements to create a business case around this. That's just how we measure for people who work in that area of the TAC. And so it was really fascinating when it came up and you actually saw that data behind it. And I would actually say that there is a ton of information about having a more inclusive and diverse workforce does help the bottom line. And I agree with you. I think that's one of the things that people tend to overlook the most. You know, they tend to feel like it's more of a corporate push rather than really understanding the impact of their bottom line. The other thing I would add is, as someone who works in the talent acquisition space and is kind of constantly looking at the labor market and the labor trends over the next, 10, 15 years, do not discount the impact of what's happening with our population right now. And so if we look at having readiness, work readiness in our population, you really have to have a focus everywhere, because if you look at the volume of people exiting the workforce over the next 10 to 15 years versus those coming in and what skills they're coming in with, it creates quite a challenge and an interesting vortex for those of us that work in talent acquisition. So it's good business on multiple fronts.
Wow, that's a very powerful statement, Kelly. Very, very powerful statements that you made. Something that also fascinates me there's so much that fascinates me about what you are doing, but the outcomes, the employment outcomes that you're presenting, there's a lot of very big brands that are getting a lot of good marketing and media attention for hiring, 35 people over 4 years, but your numbers are the most impressive by a long shot than any of the others. And I was blessed to get to speak before the United Nations, I guess it was 2 years ago. And one thing that I was saying to the countries that were in the session was that you should stop funding projects that don't have employment outcomes. That's because right. If we can't help people with disabilities become employed so they can be part of society, they can be taxpayers, they can feed their families, they can do things, you are doing a disservice. And so when I first started hearing about what Cisco, when I first started hearing about Cisco, I heard about all the amazing work you had done to support our veterans. Mm-hmm. And our wounded, warriors, and that's what I knew about Cisco, and that impressed me a lot. But the Life Changer program, I'm just blown away by it. And I have a question for you, Kelly, and I have a feeling Pat will want to comment on this too. And I'm going to tell the audience, we talked about this a little bit before we started, but one of the things that we talked about before we started the show today was talking about sort of calling out specific jobs that are going to work for the program. And I will say, before I turn the mic over to you, Kelly, one thing that I've seen, and I've actually counseled a lot of global corporations, and they'll say, what we want to do is we want to carve out these jobs, and then people with disabilities can just, apply for them. And I said, well, be careful about narrowing the focus too much. I think you're going to miss the opportunity of real innovation. And then I'm going to make one more comment, and then I'm going to let you two go with it, because I have a feeling you've got a lot to say. I went to this, and I'm not going to mention who, a very, very large financial institution, and they were so proud of employing a small group of individuals with intellectual disabilities like Down syndrome and autism. And they're like, let us show you the job. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. So we went, and there was this very, very big room. It was just a really big room, and they said most of the employees, I don't know what the employees normally did, but I think it was, making sure bills and stuff were getting out to customers. And there was nobody in the room because they worked at night. And they said, okay, well, what they do is, see how big the room is? Yes. They walk around the room and they pick up the staplers out of the carpet and the rubber bands. And they were so excited about this. And I thought, oh my goodness, you got to be kidding me. That is your reach bar for these very talented individuals, because just because somebody has an intellectual or cognitive disability does not mean they can't add value to the workforce. And of course, we're talking about the biggest, definition of disabilities, everybody being included. But I just wanted to, get you to talk a little bit about it from that perspective.
Yeah, so I think the way in which I would answer that, when we think about how we employ at Cisco, first of all of our jobs are open to people with disabilities. So we don't carve out necessarily and say we're looking only in this area or in that area. The Cisco.com website has a listing of all of our jobs. What we found was we get a lot of applications on that website. So sometimes it's hard to filter through all of those applications and make sure you're reaching everyone. When we looked at this and decided where the opportunity was, we tried to take it from the standpoint of what are the roles that we mostly hire for at Cisco? What are the areas we hire in bulk? And the example example that Pat showed earlier, it's a high volume area that we do a lot of hiring in, but it is an area that requires kind of the technical background, hence the focus on also building the supply side. So I would say where we're different in this is we didn't create a role. You know, we have the roles that we have. We are a technology company. 60% of what we hire is engineering and in the technology space. You know, the other 40% is spread out through our other various functional areas. So when we looked at this, we tried to look at where were the largest areas of opportunity in terms of volume hiring that we did, that we felt like we could introduce people to. And then we also worked on training around that from a technical standpoint. So I would say that there are no meaningless jobs created. We have no stapler puller jobs. These are all real required skill set Cisco roles that we're asking people to do for sure. The other thing that I would say around that is I think that the technical pivot is an interesting one because, again, if you come to work at Cisco or if you go to work at a Cisco competitor, you know, the training you're going to get through that is going to be valuable for you. And so we don't change the hiring criteria for people with disabilities. We look for the same level of being able to come in and do the job. We don't in any way lower a bar. You know, we say this is our bar, but through some of the training programs and enablement, we try to help them get to the bar by being able to provide it because it's something that hadn't been provided before. And it's good for us, and it's good for them. And I'll pause, Pat. I'm sure you have something you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, great description of what we're doing. But the other thing I would add that's different, and so, you know, I think people that are out there may say, you know, we hear that from companies that, you know, you can apply for any job. What we're intentionally doing is, as Kelly said, we're taking roles that we know fit. So anybody on this call can apply for any job at Cisco, and we will consider you, and we'll hire the best talent. But the other thing we did is we've had outreach programs that Kelly and I have kind of driven, specifically targeting roles, not to be exclusive, but targeting roles that we think are a great fit for people with disabilities, like these entry-level technical assistance jobs in Bangalore and Brussels. And we've hired people. And the other point I would make, Deborah, is adding to your earlier comment about what we've done, what's different about, I think, what we're doing and what I've heard from other folks is we're hiring across the whole disability spectrum. We're not just targeting people with autism. You know, there are a lot of programs out there, autism at work or, you know, whatever, and they're fantastic programs, and they're raising the bar, and they're, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. Those are great programs. Right. But what we're doing is we're focusing globally, not just U.S., not just one organization, but globally. We're focused on all disabilities and enabling employment for folks, talented folks anywhere in the world in any kind of a role. And the other thing is that we're hiring in multiple organizations, and we've hired the most people, keep me honest here, Kelly, but we've hired people, a number of people in our technical services center, our advanced services team that provides services to customers, our employee services team that provides services to our internal employees, our IT department, our sales organization, our engineering organization. It's across the company. It's not a handful of jobs in, you know, somewhere in the world, you know, focused only on one set of disabilities. We're really much focusing it much more broadly. And Kelly said it earlier. We're trying to drive this as a cornerstone of our talent strategy across the entire company, not just in a targeted area.
Gosh, it's so exciting because we've never seen this. We've never seen this. And I'll tell you, one thing that I have seen a little bit of is sometimes corporate brands will put together a program to employ people with disabilities. Maybe they get support from a service provider, but they don't really hire them. It's really, and I'm not going to name any brands, but it's really the employees get hired by the Voc Rehab or something, but they're not Cisco employees with the same as everybody else. Right, they're subcontractors, and that's okay too because subcontractors are great. But I think there's something so powerful about Cisco. Let's talk about that for a second. Are these Cisco employees or are these subcontractors? And by the way, once again, a lot of people are subcontractors. I have subcontractors, but there's something really beneficial about also hiring employees.
They're direct employees. Kelly, you want to comment?
Yeah, no, I would agree. That was the intent of the program, was to bring people into Cisco, and so we're hiring them as direct employees.
and they don't have a job, they have a career. I had a call last week from someone, I had a call unrelated, and they were telling me that one of they call them our life changer candidates, was hired into one of these technical service jobs in Bangalore, is now moved into multiple different jobs and doing really well. And this person said to me, hey, one of the folks on my team is one of the people you guys hired through this program in Bangalore, and he's doing really, really well. You know, so it's not a job, it's a career. Now, to your point on subcontractors, that's an important point too, though. It's an and for us, and we haven't really fully explored this, but this is one of the things Kelly and I and others are focused on. We do want to drive this into our supplier community. So we do have a lot of subcontractors at Cisco, and we really do want to influence them to do the same thing because there's benefits to them as well. And a lot of the people there are a number of people at Cisco that work here that are subcontractors.
Close to 50,000, by the way. Like, I mean, it's not a small. Our business model is designed that way. You know, we have full-time employees and we have contractors. Right. It's the way that we're designed.
Very common. Right. And
we
Kelly,
believe we can have more influence, not just in what we're doing, but driving it through our suppliers, our partners, and being a thought leader for our customers, sort of showing them the way. That's what we think we can do here.
And I agree, and I have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize. But tell us more about the supplier community. And before you do that, Kelly, how many employees does Cisco have around the world? I mean,
Yeah, we have a little over 70,000 around the world, a total of about 120 people if you count contractors.
70,000. 120,000.
And that's very common these days with the subcontractors and everything. And so, but it's so exciting. And I want to dig a little into the supplier community. Like you said, Pat, having the ability, Cisco's real big. Everybody knows Cisco. My husband has Cisco certifications because my husband was a technologist. And so he wanted to advance his career, so he got Cisco certified. And so tell us more about the supply chain, because I think that is a powerful, powerful comment. Not only should the community of people with disabilities be so stoked that Cisco is doing this, but the ability to influence others to do it, especially your supply, chain community.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come in, and Kelly, you may have some things to add. I mean, we have a lot of subcontractors in all different areas. I mean, they may be administrative functions, they may be, human resources or administrative or functional groups or even technical groups. And so what we're doing, and we have just started this because our focus up to now has been primarily internal. And that's why, Deborah, you've said to me many times, Cisco's doing more and talking about it less than anyone else. We aren't talking about it because we're internally focused because we want to make a difference. And that's been our focus up to now. But what we do see is the opportunity to influence others. So we're just starting now to engage in dialogue with some of our top suppliers around what we're doing, why we're doing it, what it's doing, and what it means to us. And we have thoughts, this hasn't been done, of even establishing, guidelines for our contractors. If you want to bring people into Cisco and work here, we expect to have an inclusive and diverse population of people, not just the people that you want to bring in here. And so we haven't done that yet, but that is one of the things that we're talking about. Kelly, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add to that is there's also the possibility, if you look at the Cisco ecosystem, we also have large partner organizations that work with us, that are not subcontractors, but are partners in selling Cisco products. And we have an ability, I think, also to help them with this, because we have a large footprint in this space. We've kind of proven out the model. We know what works. We have some of the training in place, and we deploy a lot of our solutions to help our partners. We're very focused on, obviously, success of our partners. So I think we have opportunity there as well. And the benefit, too, if we really take this and expand it into kind of the subcontractor community, and by the way, my team, I have a global team, and it's very blended. I have a lot of subcontractors on my recruitment team. The other benefit of that is you also get exposure to other organizations. If you're working at Cisco through a subcontract vendor, then you are also kind of inherently getting connected to jobs to be able to kind of grow your career, either in Cisco or outside of it through whoever the vendor might be.
And once again, to the audience, this is so powerful. It's just so powerful because not only is Cisco doing this all over the world. Think about being blind in Bangladesh Bangalore. Oh, sorry, I messed up the name. But think about being blind there. It's probably a little bit more difficult than being blind in the United States. Think about the opportunity to work. I mean, and it's just such powerful. It's very powerful, but then you have the ability to really support your customers that want to do it, and the supply chain, and it's just really, really exciting. We have not seen something like this for our community. We're just so excited about it. And I wonder, tell us how this is, how is this impacting your competitors, or do you know if it is yet? And I'll say before you start, if I have anything to do with it, I'm going to make sure the world knows about what you're doing here at Cisco, because this is very powerful. And a lot of times competitors, when they see somebody getting a whole lot more attention than them, they start paying even more attention. So let's talk about it from that angle.
Well, I mean, we are doing customer briefings on this topic. I did one last week for a bank in Korea. Came to our customer experience center in San Jose. We have a world-class customer experience center in San Jose. We do multiple customer briefings every single day. It's one of the most impactful in the world. We also have them all over the world, but I've been asked a number of times to actually provide briefings to customers about what we're doing, because today, customers not only, and this is sort of true with millennials too, millennials and many of our customers, they don't want to just buy from a company that provides great technology. They want to buy from a company that is making a difference in the world. Yeah. And so this is an important part of our brand. And as we talked at the beginning of this, Deborah, it's part of our culture, part of our brand. So while we haven't done any specific benchmarking against competitors, what we hear from our customers is that this is meaningful to them. And many of them have initiatives as well. I mean, I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with a major pharmaceutical company. And it was 2 hours of them peppering me with questions about, what are you doing? How are you doing? What did you do there? What did you do there? How did you figure this out? What did you, and we're happy to share that. Cisco has a legacy of this. If you think about, and some of you are probably too young to remember this, I'm not, but in the 80s and 90s, when Cisco was started, late 80s and 90s, when Cisco was starting and the internet was just sort of, all the rage and was just really emerging, Cisco ran its company on the internet. So we leaned in and did some really innovative things, and then what we did is we freely shared what we were doing with everyone else. Whether it was e-commerce, we were one of the first large e-commerce companies in the world. We were one of the first companies in the world to do all of our training on the internet. We were one of the first companies in the world to run our company on the internet at the time when people said you couldn't do that. So we have a legacy of this, and we don't view this as proprietary at all. We view it as an opportunity for impact. So we're happy to share with other people what we're doing. We're happy to share it with our customers because it's part of who we are. And if the customers value us more because of that, so be it. That's a competitive advantage for sure. We're not worried about our competitors. We're worried about what we're doing to make a difference and how we can help our customers make a difference and help them be successful also.
Wow, that's a very, very powerful statement. I know that both you and Kelly said one reason why you're so excited about this is because Cisco really does want to make a big difference in the world, and this is changing lives. This is really big. This is, I've featured a lot of brands, and everybody's trying and doing some really cool stuff. I've never seen anything like this. This is huge, and this is a major game changer. This is a major tipping point for us, and to know that you're not just doing it in the United States or in the UK or in Europe, but you're doing it all over the world, including Bangalore, which I couldn't say because of my cold a minute ago. But this is very exciting. So I know that I promised to keep this to 30 minutes, which I think I didn't do, but that's okay because it's just too exciting. But tell us more about how we can learn about what you're doing, and is there a website associated with it? How can people learn more about this?
Yeah, so I'll share a couple things. First of all, kind of a summary. If you would indulge Kelly and I, and then I'll share how you can get more. So, as you could tell from this conversation and our passion, I mean, we're on a mission. This is a company-wide focus. driven, enabled through innovation to drive inclusiveness and employment acceleration across our company. We believe there's a significant global opportunity for us to access talent, as Kelly talked about, to enable our workforce, to drive our business. And we think that this is a very talented pool of people that a lot of companies, frankly, haven't thought about. And we believe it's an advantage for us, but it's also an advantage for them. You know, we're trying to do something different. We're not just trying to do what everyone else has done. Hopefully that came across here. And really enabling employment, leveraging technology, but making it part of our culture, part of our process. And we believe we have the opportunity to not only employ people, but empower them. And when you employ and empower people, you can transform their lives. That's why we called this project Life Changer at the very beginning. And a lot of people at Cisco have said, I've never seen a more visible example of what the Cisco vision has been for 30 years, to change the way the world lives, works, plays, and learns. I would add one other comment, and then I'll share with you how you can find out more. You know, we called this Project Life Changer when we started because our idea was we were going to transform lives. And we said from the very beginning, you know, if we only affect one person's life, our entire effort was worth it. What we found is, yes, we did transform the lives of people with disabilities that we hired by enabling them to have economic self-sufficiency and the self-esteem associated with a job. But what we also found is we transformed the lives of people at Cisco, because the people these folks have touched, whether it's their coworkers, their manager, their customers, their lives have been transformed too. And I can speak for myself, and Kelly, you may want to comment on this. I mean, I think we started on this mission thinking we were going to help people with an opportunity. And honestly, the people that maybe were most impacted were all of us, because it's really been a labor of love for us and something that we think, obviously, we have a great deal of passion and commitment to. Kelly, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I would agree, and I'm trying to think of something robust to add to there. That's such a great summary about kind of what our journey is and where we're going.
Yeah, so there is ways to find out more. As I said, we haven't done a lot, Deborah. You know this because you've been telling me this for a while, that we're not talking about this enough. We really have been internally focused, but if you do want to find out more, we do have an email alias, lifechanger@external.cisco.com. Send an email to that alias, and someone will reply back to you. You can find out more. We are in the process of posting more on our external websites. We do have some stuff on our internal websites, but we're posting more on our external websites, and you'll see more and more coming. And then if you want to, connect with either Kelly or myself, both of us are on Twitter. I'm at P. Romzik. She's at a not intuitive Kelly 8370. She'll tell us someday what that means. But Kelly Jones, it's Kelly 8370. But feel free to reach out to us, guys, if we can help in any way. If you see an opportunity, if you think it's something you may be interested in, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, anything we can do to help advance the mission that we all have.
And I'm also hoping that they're going to let me tell part of this story in my book that's coming up in October on inclusion branding. So I'm going to continue to brag about them because they are absolutely changing lives, and they're changing global lives. So it is, as you could imagine, is so exciting for the three of us here who all actually have children also with disabilities, but it's exciting for Cisco too. So Pat and Kelly, I applaud what you're doing. I applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Well, and Deborah, thanks for all you're doing to get the word out, because you're making a huge difference by creating a platform like this for people to understand what's being done, because honestly, it's hard to communicate. It's difficult to create awareness, and you're making a huge difference here. So we're honored to be here, and we'd be delighted to share more, and we'd certainly be honored to be part of in any way that you want to reference us in your one of your upcoming books. So.
Yes, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. And one reason why I created this platform was because I saw these amazing efforts being made even before I knew what y'all were doing. And I thought, nobody knows what's going on. And so I am really excited about what Cisco's doing. So I hope everybody that's listening and watching will join me in really applauding Cisco for these efforts. Get out on social media and tell them how much we appreciate what they're doing. Talk about it. Write to the CEO of Cisco. This is really powerful, and they're doing it in a very smart, innovative way that ties right into who they already are. It's not a whole separate program. It's just really brilliant. So Kelly and Pat, thank you so much for being on the program today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Deborah.
everyone. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.